They'd been married for 21 years. My mother said she still loved him. She kissed his forehead before she left. He helped her pack the car. And then he went back inside and finished washing the dishes. That was the last time our family looked like one. My name is Jake. I grew up in a house in Cedar Falls, Ohio, where everything worked. Not just the plumbing or the lights. My parents worked. My family worked. Dad was an engineer at the plant. Quiet, practical, the kind of man who fixed things before you knew they were broken. He spent weekends in his garage teaching me about carburetors and circuit boards. His hands were always slightly rough from years of making and mending. Mom taught music at the elementary school. She hummed while she cooked little melodies that floated through our house like invisible ribbons. Her students loved her, this woman, who could make even scales sound like poetry. They argued sometimes about bills, about whose turn it was to mow the lawn, about whether I should join track or debate team. But at night, I'd catch them slow dancing in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. We weren't rich, we weren't loud, but we were steady. For a kid like me, that meant everything. Until it didn't. Mark wasn't really our uncle. He was Dad's college roommate, the guy who brought wine to dinner and told stories about places I'd never been. He laughed loud, spoke some Italian, always had his camera. I liked him. We all did. Your dad and I survived organic chemistry together. He'd tell me, clapping Dad on the shoulder. That makes us brothers. Dad would smile. Pour another beer. Mark took photographs that made ordinary things look important. Our backyard, Dad's workbench, Mom at the piano. He'd spend forever adjusting angles, waiting for what he called the perfect shot. Sometimes I'd watch him watching Mom, his camera lowered, just looking. He made things feel more alive when he was around. But he wasn't around all the time. Just once a month. Then twice. Then every weekend. I noticed it before Dad did. Or maybe he noticed and chose silence, the way Mom's eyes followed Mark when he left a room. How she started wearing lipstick on days we knew he was coming. The new sweaters that appeared in her closet. I was 14, old enough to feel the shift, like when storm pressure builds and your ears need to pop. The day Mom told us she was leaving, it was sunny. They had been married for 21 years. She made chocolate chip cookies, vacuumed, wore her favorite dress, the green one Dad bought her for Christmas. Dad sat in his chair reading. I was in the hallway pretending not to listen. She said, "I love you, you know that, right?" He looked up, smiled. "Of course," he said. She said, "But I'm leaving." He didn't speak, just blinked, once, twice, then stood up and hugged her, and asked, "Do you want help packing?" I waited for the explosion, the accusations, the fight that would shatter our house. But there was only silence, and then Dad's footsteps heading upstairs. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. "Jake," she said, "come here." I didn't move. "Please," she said, "I need to explain." I walked over like I was crossing thin ice. "I'm not leaving you," she said, taking my hands. "But sometimes adults need different things." "You mean Mark," I said. She looked surprised, then sad. "It's complicated." "Dad loves you, that's not complicated." She didn't answer, just held me for a long time. "I'll see you all the time," she promised. Nothing will change that much, but everything had already changed. She drove off with Mark in his Honda. I stood in the driveway until their taillights disappeared. When I turned around, Dad was gone back inside. I found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hands in soapy water. He went back inside and finished washing the dishes. That night he reheated leftover casserole, ate alone, washed his bowl. Then he sat in his chair and read about solar panels. He never once said her name. The next morning he made pancakes, asked about my history test. reminded me to take out the trash. It was terrifying, this normalcy. I wanted to scream, to break something. Instead, I ate my pancakes, took the test, emptied the trash. It wasn't that the house was quieter. It was that the piano was. For weeks, I'd expect to hear Chopin or hymns. Instead, just the ticking of the hall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. I thought he'd sell it. Instead, he tuned it. "She might want to play when she visits," he said. "Is she going to visit?" "Of course she is." I pressed a key. The note rang out clear, perfect, and heartbreakingly alone. I didn't know how to play. Mom had offered to teach me dozens of times, but I'd always said no. Now I wished I'd said yes. Mom called a week later. We talked about school, about baseball, about nothing important. Then I asked, "Why Mark?" Silence. So long I checked if the call had dropped. "It's not about Mark, not really," she finally said. "It's about feeling seen. Dad sees you. Your father lives in his projects. I spent years trying to reach him, trying to tell him I was drowning." "You seemed happy." "I was, sometimes, but there were other times." She paused. "Do you remember my art show last spring?" I did. She'd taken up painting after buying supplies at a garage sale. Dad was supposed to come, but the Hendersons' furnace broke. It wasn't just that night. It was 100 little moments. Until one day I realized I'd become invisible. And Mark saw you. Mark reminded me that I'm more than just your mother, or your father's wife. After we hung up, I thought about being seen, about being invisible. I thought about Dad constantly fixing things but maybe never noticing what was broken right in front of him. For the first time, I wondered if loving someone wasn't enough to keep them. She came back 8 months later, just for a weekend. She looked different, not worse, just more faded. Her hair was shorter. She wore clothes I didn't recognize, laughed at different things. We sat in the living room, the three of us drinking iced tea and pretending this was normal. She asked Dad if the water heater was still acting up. He said, "No, I fixed it." That was all. She stayed in the guest room. On Saturday night, she played piano. Bach, not Chopin. Something structured, contained. Dad sat in his chair, pretending to read, but watching her fingers move across the keys. On Sunday morning, she packed her small bag. "How's Mark?" Dad asked as he loaded her car. It was the first time he'd said his name. "He's fine," she said, looking surprised. "He's in Portland for work." Dad nodded. "Tell him I said hello." She stared at him, searching for anger or bitterness, but there was none. After that, Mom came back more often. Birthdays, holidays, random weekends when Mark was traveling. Life developed a new rhythm. Different, but not terrible. She and Mark moved to Colorado. She taught music there, sent pictures of mountains and her garden. Dad stayed in our house, kept his job, built a shed in the backyard and filled it with woodworking tools. I once asked Mom if she was happy with her choice. We were sitting in Riverside Park watching kids on the playground. It was autumn leaves falling like gold coins. "Most days," she said. "Mark is passionate, exciting. He lives every moment like it might be his last." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "But he's not reliable like your father. He forgets things, makes plans and breaks them." "So you traded security for excitement?" She looked at me, really looked, and I saw something like regret. "I traded one kind of loneliness for another," she said. "But it was my choice to make." That night I asked Dad if he ever thought about dating. He was fixing the kitchen sink, head bent under the counter. "No," he said simply. "Why not? It's been 4 years." He emerged, wiping his hands. "Some people get one great love. I had mine. But she left." "She did. But that doesn't change how I feel. I wanted to shake him, to make him fight for himself." "Don't you want to be happy?" He smiled, then a real smile. "I am happy, Jake. I have you. I have my work. I have this house. It's enough. I didn't believe him, but I wanted to. Years passed. I went to college at Ohio State, started a career, fell in love, got my heart broken, fell in love again. Dad retired, took up serious woodworking, built furniture that was too beautiful to use. Mom and Mark eventually separated, not with drama. They simply grew apart, she said. She moved to New Mexico, taught piano lessons from her adobe house. She and Dad still talked occasionally about me mostly. They were cordial, even friendly, but they never tried again. 2 years ago, Dad had a heart attack. Nothing dramatic, he drove himself to Cedar Falls General. Called me after they'd admitted him. Just a little warning to slow down, he said. I flew home immediately. Found him in a hospital bed, looking smaller but still smiling. And there asleep in the chair beside his bed was Mom. She'd flown in as soon as she heard. Had been there all night. Refused to leave even when visiting hours ended. When Dad was released, she came home with us. Cooked his favorite meals. Made sure he took his pills. Sat with him on the porch watching Ohio sunsets. They didn't talk about the past. Didn't make promises, they just were. After 2 weeks, she packed her bags again. I drove her to the airport. You could stay, I said. She smiled sadly. No, honey, that chapter is closed. But you still care about him. Of course I do. I always will. But sometimes caring isn't enough. Sometimes people break each other without meaning to. He'd take you back in a heartbeat. I know, and that's precisely why I can't stay. My mother said she still loved him, and maybe she did, but she also left, and he let her go. Not because he stopped loving her, but because he knew real love doesn't beg to be chosen. It just stays. Some nights I think about that day watching her car disappear down Maple Street, watching him go back inside to finish the dishes. I used to think his response was weak. Now I see it was the bravest thing he ever did. Not all love stories end with people together. Some end with letting go. Some end with a man washing dishes while his heart breaks quietly inside his chest. But ending doesn't mean it wasn't love. It just means that love, real love, sometimes looks like knowing when to release someone, even if they take part of you with them when they go.